I used to work the night shift at a gas station just off the highway outside my town. Quiet area, nothing but pine trees and cracked asphalt for miles. Most nights, it was dead silent. Maybe 3 or 4 customers between midnight and 6 a.m. It was boring, but easy money. I'd sit behind the counter, sip terrible coffee, and kill time watching old horror movies on the mini TV we kept behind the counter. Ironically, the horror movies were less disturbing than what happened one particular night. It was a Tuesday, middle of October, a little after 2 a.m. The temperature had dropped fast, and a thick fog was rolling in. I was standing outside the door taking a smoke break when I noticed something weird. A car had pulled into the lot, but didn't park. It just sat there with the engine running and the headlights off. At first, I figured someone was making a call or messing with their GPS, but after 5 minutes, the car still hadn't moved. I couldn't see inside. The windows were tinted and fogged over. I got this sinking feeling in my gut, so I stubbed my cigarette and went back inside. I watched from behind the counter, pretending to mess with the lottery tickets, but keeping an eye on the front door. Finally, the car door opened. A guy stepped out, slowly, like he was testing the ground. He was tall, wore a hoodie with the hood up, and walked like he didn't want to be seen. He entered the store without a word, didn't even look at me, just started pacing the aisles, picking things up and putting them back. Every now and then, he'd glance at me over his shoulder. Now, I've dealt with weirdos before. Drunks, tweakers, you name it. But this guy was different. He wasn't twitchy or loud. He was calm. Too calm. After about 10 minutes, he came to the register with a bottle of water and a pack of gum. I rang him up and tried to act normal. "That'll be $2.50, I said. He didn't reach for his wallet. Just stared at me and asked, "You here alone?" I lied. Said the manager was in the back doing inventory. His eyes scanned the store, like he was trying to spot someone. Then he smiled. Not friendly. The kind of smile the killer in a horror movie would give right before he strikes an unsuspecting victim. That's when I got a good look at his face. It was weathered and rough, like someone who'd been through a lot. Deep lines around his eyes and mouth, scars faint but there. His eyes were cold and sharp, the kind that don't miss a thing. A hardened look, like he'd spent years living on the edge and wasn't afraid of anything. He dropped a 5 on the counter and walked out. I watched him get back in his car, but he didn't leave. Just sat there again, same as before. No headlights, engine idling. I called my boss. Luckily he answered, so I told him something felt off. He brushed it off, said I was being paranoid. "Probably just a guy taking a break from driving," he said. Then around 3 a.m., another car pulled into the lot. This one parked by the side of the building, just at a view from the front windows. A man got out and walked around the back toward the dumpsters. A few seconds later, the power in the building flickered. Lights went out for maybe 2 seconds, long enough for the cameras to cut. We didn't have backup power. The boss was too cheap to get a generator or even a battery for the backup cameras. So when the lights cut, so did the feed. When the lights came back on, the guy in the hoodie was standing just outside the front doors again. Just standing there. Not trying to come in, just watching. I locked the doors immediately and called the cops. Told them I felt threatened. That someone was lurking around, and I didn't feel safe. The dispatcher said a patrol unit had just wrapped up a traffic stop nearby and would swing by in a few minutes. I got lucky. While I was on the phone, the man outside slowly turned around and walked back to his car, but before he left, he bent down and picked something up from underneath it. A crowbar. It had been stashed there the whole time. He drove off just before the police arrived. The second guy by the dumpsters was gone too. He vanished like he'd never even been there. The cops checked the lot, took my statement, and reviewed what little footage we had. It didn't show much, just a glitch where the power flickered and then static for several seconds. Nothing useful. That morning, when my boss came in to relieve me, we found scratch marks on the back door. Deep ones, like someone had tried to pry it open. I gave my notice that same day. A few weeks later, I saw a report on the news. A gas station about 40 miles away had been robbed during the night shift. The clerk was attacked, beaten to death with a crowbar. The footage showed 2 men. One wore a hoodie. The other came around the back and cut the power before they struck. If the cops hadn't shown up when they did that night, I might not be here telling the story. I've been a long-haul truck driver for almost 10 years. The open road is all I know. Endless miles, late nights, and the quiet hum of the engine keeping me company. But one night, on a stretch of highway I thought I knew well, made me question everything I believed about what's out there after dark. It was late October, and I was hauling freight from my home state to a small town a few hundred miles away. The highway was long, straight, and flanked by thick forest on both sides, a lonely stretch I'd driven a couple times before, usually without issue. Around 2 a.m., I made my first stop at a remote truck stop just off the highway. I needed to use the bathroom and stretch my legs. The lot was nearly empty, only a few rigs like mine scattered around. As I walked back to my truck, I noticed something strange near the driver's side tire. The dirt was disturbed with deep, long scratch marks, almost like claw marks, but way too big for any animal I knew. I figured maybe some local wildlife had passed through, or maybe it was a prank, but it stuck in the back of my mind. I got back in the cab, started the engine, and pulled back onto the road. The fog had rolled in thick, swallowing the edges of the highway like a ghostly curtain. My headlights cut through the mist, but beyond that, everything faded into shadow. As I drove, the usual night sounds felt off. The rustling of the trees, branches snapping just beyond the tree line, even the faintest heavy breathing carried on the wind. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see something, but I never did, just shadows flickering at the edge of my vision. About an hour later, I pulled off at another gas station to refuel. The place felt worn and old, like it hadn't changed in decades. Inside, I went to pay. The lights buzzed overhead as I handed the clerk my card. He looked up with tired eyes that seemed to hold more than just boredom. Just to make conversation, I leaned in and asked quietly, "Hey, have you heard about any strange scratches or marks around trucks here? Like really big, deep claw marks in the dirt? I found some around mine the last time I stopped." His eyes flickered, something like fear or warning, but he said nothing at first. Instead, he quickly began closing the register, his fingers moving faster than what seemed natural. Then he looked me dead in the eyes and said, low and serious, "You don't want to stick around here much longer. Whatever's making those marks, it's not just some animal. You'd better get moving before it finds you." The weight of his words sent chills straight through me. I grabbed my card after paying, nodded, and hurried out of the store. Back in my truck, I noticed fresh signs the creature might have been near. Broken branches scattered around, new deep scratches on the ground, even a scrap of coarse fur caught in my left side mirror. I locked the doors, started the engine, and pulled back into the foggy highway. The radio crackled with static, and I thought I heard faint whispers carried on the wind. Then, just out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse. A tall, thin shadow disappearing behind the trees, something too quick and unnatural to be a person or any animal. I slammed the accelerator down, heart pounding as the fog swallowed the road ahead. I don't know what I saw that night. Was it real? A trick of the fog and exhaustion? All I know is I'll never drive that stretch of highway after dark again. I never used to believe in anything supernatural. Ghosts, spirits, curses, it was all just campfire stories to me. I'm a practical man, always have been. That's why I took the night shift as a groundskeeper at the old cemetery outside of town. Quiet work, steady pay, no people. That was the appeal. The place is about a mile off the highway, surrounded by woods on 3 sides. There's a long dirt road leading up to it, and the nearest house is maybe 10 minutes away. I'd spend most of my nights walking the fence line, checking for falling branches or vandalism. Sometimes I'd sit in the tiny maintenance shed and listen to the radio or read. The job was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Until about a month ago. It started with the footprints. We'd just buried a man named Walter Griggs, a local who died under odd circumstances. According to the obituary, he'd been found alone in his cabin days after anyone who'd last seen him. No sign of a struggle, no wounds, no cause of death the coroner could pin down. Just gone. Like he'd shut down. No family came forward, so the funeral was quiet. The following night, during my usual patrol, I noticed something strange. A single set of footprints in the mud, leading up to his grave. Not away, just 2. They were fresh, pressed deep, as if someone had been standing there for a long time. But no one was around. I figured maybe a family member had stopped by to pay respects. Weird, but not impossible. The next night, I found the same thing. Footprints in the mud, same spot. Only this time, they were deeper, and there were drag marks around them, like someone had knelt or crouched. But again, no one in sight. By the third night, I started to feel uneasy. I chalked it up to an overactive imagination. Still, I brought a flashlight with a wider beam and started carrying a crowbar, just in case. Then things escalated. One night, as I was doing my rounds, I noticed a lantern swinging on its hook by a tool shed. There was no wind. It was just swaying, slow and steady, creaking like a metronome. Another time, a headstone, solid marble, was flat on its face. No cracks, no sign of impact, just like it had been gently pushed over. That grave, also near Griggs's. Then came the whispers. Soft, like someone was murmuring just out of earshot. I'd stop and listen, thinking it was the radio, but it wasn't. It was always coming from the trees. The worst night came after a thunderstorm. The sky had cleared, but the air still felt charged. I was making my way around the west side when I saw it. A person standing perfectly still between two graves, not moving an inch. I froze. My light was dim, but I can make out the shape. Tall, thin, but wearing what looked like dark clothing. I called out, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here," but got nothing. I started toward them. Each step I took, my heartbeat got louder in my ears. When I got about 10 feet away, my flashlight flickered. Just once, but enough to break focus. And when it steadied, the figure was gone. No movement, no footsteps. Nothing but dead silence. I told myself I'd imagined it. That maybe the shadows were playing tricks. But then came the final night. I was walking my route, the same as always. It was a quiet night. No wind, no animals, just stillness. As I approached Griggs's grave, I saw them again, not standing this time. Crouched beside the grave, one hand on the headstone like they were mourning. Or waiting. I froze. The air around me felt heavy, thick like syrup. I lifted my flashlight and shined it toward them. The beam landed for just a second. What I saw wasn't clear, but the skin was pale, the face wrong. Too long, like something human that had been stretched, like someone wearing a face that didn't quite fit. And then they were gone. Not ran. Gone. No movement, no sound. Just vanished like they'd blinked out of existence. I walked at the spot, body shaking, not even realizing I was holding my breath. Where they'd been crouching, there was a small item sticking out of the dirt. I picked it up. It was a photograph, old, faded. In it was a man in his 20s, standing next to a gravestone. My heart dropped into my stomach. The gravestone in the photo, it was Walter Griggs. The same one I'd seen every night for the last week. And the man in the photo, it was me. Younger, thinner, but unmistakably me. I left the cemetery that night and never went back. Turned in my keys the next morning. Burned the photo. I still don't know what I saw out there. I don't care to find out. But the scariest part wasn't the figure. It wasn't the footprints or the whispers. It was realizing I'd been there before. Somehow. Long before I ever took that job. The memory came back to me in flashes after I saw the photo. I had been in that cemetery before. As a teenager, sneaking around with some friends after dark, trying to spook each other. We only stayed a few minutes, long enough for me to dare someone to pose next to an old grave. I was the one who took the picture. But I never remembered being in it, and I sure didn't remember standing next to that headstone. Walter Griggs hadn't even died yet. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, that maybe someone doctored the photo as a sick prank. But deep down, I know better. There's something wrong with that place. Something that watches, something that waits. And sometimes, it remembers you. If you made it this far, thank you for joining us here at Horrors Unleashed. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps us more than you know. Also be sure to comment which true horror story was your favorite. I'll read every single one. If you have any true horror stories you would like to share, send them to the email in the description. You might just hear it in a future video. Thank you.